everybody. We are back because, well, lots of people just finished watching or are still watching. The four of us together in our last episode together that is still premiering on the channel. But now we started this live and we're live on Mike's channel. Gerald, welcome. Not sure if we're live on yours again, but
we are not. But
on Facebooks and on YouTube's, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble. I think I've actually figured it out where the Rumble comments finally integrate. If not, I'm gonna have. It'll be sorted by the next time, and then also Instagram as well. So it's crazy how much we're growing and the different engagements, because this is how we're gonna overcome the algorithm shadow banning and like the system of compartmentalization and preventing this information and development from happening. And it's just an awesome thing to keep seeing, and more engagement, more people coming together and sharing their developments, and it's an unstoppable force, really. And it's about what it's about is you guys sharing your work and your developments. And I'm gonna shut up and let you guys take it away for a bit.
Yeah, thanks for everybody to show up tonight to the show. We're doing a multi-stream. As BurnEye was saying, we're also on my channel at Faraday Research on YouTube, and also on my X channel, Facebook. I got the live stream there on my YouTube channel. Just click on the live tab and you'll see the live feed there as well. Also, after the show is done, it will be posted there. If anybody missed part of the show, they can go back later and watch the rest of it. So we got Gerald and we got Jeremiah joining us tonight.
hello.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Indeed, gentlemen.
Got quite a lot to talk about. Actually, BurnEye was touching on being shadow banned, and my channel I think has been encountering that issue right now, because I've been like stagnant as far as like new subscribers. Between 2,700 and 2,900 I just rolled over today.
They finally let you reach 29. Hopefully, it lets you keep climbing to 3, right? The algorithm, they'll delete you, right? They'll keep you below certain numbers.
Yeah.
They'll, like mine now, I've been stuck at 94 or 9,400 or 410 is what it's let me up to now. And for the longest time, it wouldn't let me go above 9,370, and it would like delete them back down to that each time. And it's just crazy.
I got you both beat hands down. YouTube will not let me get past. I can't even get to 600 subscribers, let alone 6,000. And now not only am I losing subscribers, I'm losing views on videos. And if you type in the title of 3 of my videos, they don't come up. There's about 3 pages of other videos that come up, but not mine. So
I had to dig for your stuff. Honestly, I had to go right to your channel directly. So a lot of people out there, if they didn't know who you were, they wouldn't know where to go. So you're losing all the views. It's the algorithm. They're screwing with everybody who's doing this stuff right now, especially anybody that is.
There's these other like bunk freaking supposed free energy channels that come up with a ridiculous design every day that somehow get 1 million fucking views, and it's all shit. Or
they saturate it.
Or it's free energy like specialists that will build and disprove. They'll make a non-functioning, non-working model of like the actual designs that have come out and been proven to work. Such thing as like the Don Smith spark gap generator, the Bendini motor, and a couple others I've seen them do it with and focus on. Also, the Keshi.
For sure. Any of that stuff is going to get, actually, there's been a few people that have been pulled right off, actually got banned. just
Yeah,
recently.
shout out to Jason Verbelli, and it's still a travesty what they've done to him. The amount of science and technology progression that they have withheld, like stolen from humanity by deleting his 2 excellent YouTube channels over
Yep.
2 years ago now on these bunk claims about giving false health advice simply from him showing how to make electric or magnetic structured water. And it's absolutely ridiculous, horrible.
See,
And shout out
that's
to Rebelli. I actually emailed him the link to join. Sadly, he hasn't joined a single one since they did that to him. It literally crushed his soul, and it's travesty. Sorry.
Yeah, he did
you
a
know
lot
what
of good.
that's.
Go ahead,
Go
Mike.
ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say
That,
Jason Verbelli did a lot of good work. I got almost every video he has. He worked with John Cyril for a few years. Like, he knew his stuff. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I think it's just goes to show this is a perfect example. You have to multi-stream your stuff on Rumble, Odyssey, Facebook. You have to diversify yourself. That's the only way you're going to get a footprint out there and get the algorithm working for you again. So if you're just doing YouTube, you're actually making a big mistake by that. You have to branch out to these other platforms.
I
Very
agree.
important.
I've
Yeah, you
tried.
have to.
I've tried to get into every one of those platforms, and I can't seem to get any of my emails back. So I can't get activated. Even on Rumble, I have a channel, but I can't activate it. And every time I get them to resend, it doesn't come. I've changed emails, everything. So am I watched? Well, maybe. When you got it, you got it. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, yeah, you have to you have to go on several platforms now. Like you have to. There's no choice. There's going to be a time when YouTube's going to totally ban everything that we're doing right now. So you might as well get your footprint out there on other platforms. That's what I
Well, I'm
suggest.
definitely trying. I think I'm gonna go through somebody else's name to put my stuff out there because uh, I think I made a mistake on a live a while back stating that I'm gonna put out tutorial videos on how to build every coil I've ever built once I hit 1,000 subscribers. Because now I can't get past 600. Shouldn't have said that. I think.
But it's a growing trend, and even more so now. Even us guys here, we never thought we would have all the problems. Think of Bernie. How many times did they ban your channel? Twice, 3
Yeah,
times.
I still twice, and they still haven't given me back my original channel that's like linked to my official university email account that just now when you freaking look it up, oh, banned for pornography. Like, what the fuck, you goddamn assholes.
You know what?
All
I post on the Facebook news groups, and that's where I get a lot of my traffic actually from Facebook. Believe it or not. And
exactly.
lately, and I'm noticing now some of those channels on YouTube are starting to get a lot of spam, like all the porn stuff and all that. And they're deliberately trying to sabotage these news groups, which is a big mistake. It is so bad. Like, come on, leave
I
the news groups alone.
I
You know,
can't
because
even access my Facebook ever since my first channel was hacked. My Facebook, all of it's been locked out. I've sent messages and no, I get nothing back. So I've lost my Facebook.
yeah, it's like you have to almost go totally anonymous. You have to go by a total anonymous name. Like, you have to be like almost like a ghost.
Right,
Yep.
an entity, aka how about a corporation, a business? And I do encourage everybody to create Facebook, Meta, Instagram, as well as of course
Yeah,
Rumble, and of course YouTube as well. Multiple different YouTube channel entities, aka corporations. You got to use the corporation to beat the corporation, essentially.
yeah. I'll try to beat them at their own game, right? So
Well, it's worth a
anyway,
shot, but you know.
so guys, where do you want to start tonight? Time travel,
Yeah,
experiments.
jump in with both feet right into the deep end.
seeing
That's
how
great.
time traveled so far from the time we were supposed to start to the time that we finally started, because I finally got it together, we are prepared with what we were originally, I think, going to talk about: how names, etymology, spell binding, and then how it gets into this time bio fields and the science of it. Is that?
Well, we could get into that for sure. I did want to go over part of my story somebody had asked me about when I had died, and I didn't go over it in Mike's last live. So I don't know when you guys want to get into that, but I thought I'd bring that up.
Well, bring it up now. Let's get it out. And
Okay, so the only way that I could really well, I mean, I could answer questions at any point, but I'll tell the story. I wasn't exactly a good kid when I was young. I was drinking with a bunch of friends. My dad had gone out of town, and I had a party at the house, and I drank for like 2 days. So I got into a fight with my best friend, and he ended up leaving the house. But as he was leaving, he closed the screen door, and you know the screen door has glass windows in it, right? So I called his name, and he turned around, and I put my fist through the window and I punched him in the face. But when I had pulled back, I had ripped absolutely everything in my wrist except for my pinky tendon. So every vein, every
Insta
tendon.
karma for drunk young foolishness.
Yep,
But
and I got what I deserved, right? So here I am bleeding. I had enough alcohol in my system where I really shouldn't have made it. So I had gotten brought up to my brother's room. They laid me down. I looked at my three friends and I said, I'll catch you on the flip side. And I passed out. I was done. I died at that moment. The funny part is I was having a party. And when that happened, the ambulance was called and everybody was coming out of the party like they were leaving. People that were leaving stripped the ambulance. So the two ambulance attendants came in with their bags, and as everybody was leaving, they stripped the ambulance and ran. So the two attendants that were there, between the two of them, they had been on the job for like 25 years. And all they had was their bags with them to do their work on me. So they brought me back to life. But in between that, when I had passed, I entered into like absolute blackness. Like you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. I could feel my face, but I couldn't see my hand. I couldn't see anything. There was no light whatsoever. And I called out. I said, "What about God? What about Jesus Christ?" And all of a sudden, I'm standing at the end of this hallway, and there's this door at the end, and it's beaming light out of it. And this woman comes out of it, and she was my dead grandmother. I know everybody's heard a story like this. And she says to me, "You have to go back. There's something you have to do." And I was like, "I don't want to go back. I'm home." She says, "No, you have to go back." And she touches my shoulder, and instantly it felt like I was coming down and floating through clouds. But as I was going through each cloud, like a level, the first level was pain. The next level was anger. The next level after that was disdain. And then the level after that was, say, maybe greed, and I felt every one of these things, and then my eyes opened up. Well, one eye. I woke up with a black eye and looking up at the ambulance attendants, because apparently after I had passed, my friends were freaked out. The only way he knew how to get me awake, or try to, was to punch me in the face.
punch you in the face.
Yeah, he wanted to shock me awake. It didn't work. So, of course, the ambulance attendants, did their thing. And that is...
Wow, though, the grandma, the ancestor, like when you're younger, and like that's probably the most closest relative to you that has passed, and like generationally, like touching you, sending you back. And then your description of the experience of going through the 7 states of like and starting with like the pain and then anger and like all like that's just
And
blew my
while I was
mind,
standing,
resonated with me. Listen to
while
that.
I was standing at that hallway, I've never felt so much love before in my life. Like there's no words in the human language to actually explain what I felt.
The
So
embrace, right, that you described, that you were home, right? I don't want to go back. And this just triggered the instant memory of a couple friends of mine that are both tragically now since passed and deceased from opiate overdose. But before that, they had each survived previous overdose attempts. And what they had described to me was that it's like they just saw this light opens up in this tunnel and this absolute craziest warmth that just keeps calling to you of like, oh, you're home now, you want to come, and then something just some sort of memory with the family or something, I think it was, or something that like jolts them back to life, and just like how absolute parallel to what you experienced.
well, there's a lot more detail to it, but I'm trying to condense it. Like the voices I heard, the laughter, the singing, it was like families playing on a beach, right? It was just amazing. But I was just gonna continue and say how lucky I was to for my hand to be saved, because as I got to the hospital, I mean, I'm gonna date myself here. This is like 30 years ago, okay? So as I got to
I'm
the
not far behind.
yeah, so as I got to the hospital, there was a surgeon there, the head of, I think
Are
it's
you willing
thoracic, but
to
I could be wrong.
show your arm on camera like you did
Absolutely,
pre-record? Okay, because like this is
just to get a
absolute
reference, right?
proof that he is either possessed by like one of those Stargate thing, alien things, that like a live eel moving in him, or what he's saying is true. You'll see what I'm talking about in a moment.
Okay, so I'll give a little context before I show my wrist. So, because I put my fist through the window and I cut everything, when I was in the hospital, there was I believe it's thoracic, but I could be getting it wrong. He was the head of surgery that deals with veins and tendons, and he was from John Hopkins in the States. I'm up in Canada, just so you're aware. And he was doing a seminar at the university. And because I had come in the way I came in, I was the perfect example for him to show his students. So I had to sign a waiver form and stuff like that. I won't get into all the details about that, but once I signed it, they gave me the operation. It took 8.5 hours to rebuild my wrist, and I'll show you the scarring. Let's see if I can get this right here.
I just want to say, Gerald, after this, wow.
Yeah, it's not
There's
really.
there's no way to top this story, man.
So, like, do you get the Stargate alien reference now?
Yes. Here,
What
I'll
is
try and
moving
give you
under
a better.
the skin, son, other than pendants that were restitched together?
Wow. There's no way to top this. It's all over now. That's it for tonight. You know,
Yeah, really.
I'm doing laundry. That's my night. How's that?
Hey, that's more exciting than what I'm doing right now, Tim. So you win.
I'm doing alchemy. Mike's
Oh, there you go.
Mike's also doing some free energy. And is now a good time for you to maybe show what you've got set up and do the demonstration?
No, I don't have anything set up for demo tonight. But one thing I did dig up on is one of Eric Dollar's old videos. He did a thing he called energy synthesis. So what makes electricity? What makes energy? And he was talking about back in the day, they had these giant masts and they connect together, and it was an opening switch. So whenever they had to shut off the mains from the power station, they had 200,000 volts going through these mains, and they would open up like this, open and close. And when that happened, it created a huge arc. Try to imagine this: 200,000 volts going through this main switching circuit. When it opens up, it creates this huge plasma.
How much it would weld together? Like, what sort of
I've
force
seen
to
that.
take
I know
that
what you're talking
apart?
about. power. You're
Yeah,
talking about the power station mains, right? I know what
yeah,
you're talking about. And it
yes,
goes up in
right,
the air, and it's got
yeah,
that. Zzz, yeah, that's hardcore. I've
right.
seen videos of that.
Okay, so the big problem back in probably the early 1900s, 1920, 1930, when they were first designing these things, they were having this issue where extra power was entering the system the second they opened the mains, to the point where it creates such a surge of power, the substation a half kilometer down the road would blow up. So they had a situation on their hands. If they wanted to open up the switch, they would get this huge rush of power coming into the system, where at that time they had no idea where this extra power was coming in. So
Yeah, didn't
it
they
led
refer to
to,
them as transient?
no, it's not transient. It's
Well, that
basically
was a
energy
term
coming
they
from,
called it temporarily to explain it, of this
right.
transient.
Fair enough.
But
Sorry
what
to
it
stop you, Mike.
is, so what they later figured, it was energy coming from the ether. It's coming from the atmospheric energy. When this thing
Like
opens up and
static
that arc is
electrical
created,
force, essentially.
well, it's pulling the energy from the atmosphere and bonding and coupling with the arc. And that's why they're getting this huge surge of power. Not alone, they already got 200,000 volts going through it, but to have even more energy flying into the circuit as it's being opened. That's why the substation half mile down the road, half kilometer down the road would blow up. And this
I
was a
just
huge
had the
problem.
wildest thought, and it comes to how, like, the electrical differential goes up every meter or whatnot, going up, and like all the ancient
Well,
um, like cathedral towers with their domes and then their big old antennas on top with it, and that it's the arc, that plasma arc going up into what you just described there, just like the Don
yeah,
Smith spark gap generator, that when you have these plasma arcs going into the atmosphere, that's where they're able to then pick up the radiant energy into, that they then
yeah,
feed back
yeah,
into the system, that then gives you
right.
your own unity, your free energy,
So,
right? It's open
Well,
dynamics.
I can comment on that a little bit here. And so you can read about this in Steinmetz's book, Elementary Lectures on Electric Discharges, Waves, and Impulses. So Charles Proteus Steinmetz writes about this phenomenon. Eric Dollard attempted to correct the mathematics and modify what was not presently in there, which is some of the compressed nonlinear delta T functions. So he found out that when you connect a very large capacitive load, so you have some huge amount of energy accumulated up and it can be instantly discharged. But if you're going to send it down a single wire where you have an open circuit, that single wire acts as an instantaneous infinite capacitor, meaning that the amount of current that can flow into it is
yeah,
effectively instantaneous. Now, just
yeah,
like any kind of disconnect from back EMF of an inductor, the tiny little length of wire that's immediately touching the contactor of the switch when the line is closed with this very high potential, which, by the way, in the case of the electric power stations, it's not being fed from storage capacitors like we would conventionally think. It's being fed
yeah,
from the inductance of the windings of the generator. So when that's
that's right.
connected, it goes through the inductance of the step-up transformer, which has got a
Right.
huge amount of oomph behind it, and all of that energy is transferred to that line. So in that tiny segment, a huge amount of current flows, far more current than would ever flow through that line continuously. And as a result, the potential on the immediate longitudinal mode transmission down the wire builds up a magnetic flux that has to be neutralized. So the potential on the line, if you say close a switch at 13,000 volts, will actually rise to well over 500,000 volts. And the amount of current behind it is unquenchable, meaning that it will break out into streamers in the air. So think about the pressure wave traveling down it. Imagine like you've got
Oh,
this light beam traveling down and you can see like the end of the boundary. The difference between where the electrons have already started to move, where they're already accelerated, and where they're not moving yet, is very high volts per meter. And
yeah,
that's the condition required to create atmospheric discharge and breakdown, hence why these conductors were reported to have corona and streamers spiking out of them as these switches were closed. And some of these streamers were long enough, several feet in some cases, to zap people standing close by and kill them.
yeah, yeah. Several people got killed, they said, especially at the substation when the transformers blow up. It's a pretty violent explosion. he said they had one incident in New York City that was part of the New York City train transit. Back then, it was all electric powered, and it actually made the ground lift up 2 feet off the ground when one of these discharges went off.
I don't
So we're
doubt that
talking,
at all. If we think about
yeah,
these
yeah,
like fairly
yeah,
humbling videos of electric arcs between 500 kV distribution lines when they open up their 3-phase contactor switches, and we all see the big old arc,
oh
fly
man,
out into the air.
I
That's
love that
nothing. That
sound.
is small fries. This pulse is so powerful. It's not an arc. It's not a spark. You've never seen anything like it. This is an explosive electric pulse. One that's so
yeah,
powerful you can feel it from many, many feet away. It hits you like a wave. It's like being, it's basically like having a blank fired at you.
Is that like a high
yeah.
potential sort of a, because it's so high, it actually takes some current just in the very movement?
But because because the potential rises so fast, it's not really about the maximum voltage, even if it only hits 500 kV. Hell, even if it's only 13,000 volts, if that's 13,000 volts in 1 millimeter,
Yeah,
your
you got a
megavolts
point
per
there.
meter is way beyond the breaking threshold.
Yeah, the system wasn't designed to hold that, and it blows up as a result. But kind of go back to my device. That's why I've been using the spark gap switch. That might, um, you know, have some value to why I'm getting a potential rise that I am by using that make and break switch and getting that arc going at a good speed. It's probably creating a bit of a shock wave, maybe actually helping with the current that's being generated in the coil while I'm getting the inductive reactance. So there might be some connection there. I found that kind of interesting.
Absolutely. We've actually modified that same impulse dynamic into a drive mechanism that we identified as a 2-coil system. It's one that's been invented by 13 people throughout history. And we also stumbled across this and then found the other people who had previously come up with it. But yeah, we're going to use that same extraordinary high energy impulse with no place to go in order to create an intense magnetic field. So we're going to redirect it back into the inductance of a loop and use the accelerated electron potential to specifically produce a very, very high intensity multi-Tesla magnetic field over the course of about 1 nanosecond. And that will give us a way higher quarter wave transmission power on our antenna than we could ever achieve with a driving system or a transmitter of any kind.
Yeah. So, like my large Renegade device, I put it on the scope and I was getting about 3/4 of a kilowatt of reactive power coming off the coil cell. And mind you, I'm only putting in a half a watt of power, which is pretty incredible, I think. It's because that make and break is something with the spark gap. And that's why I started using it, because I seen this special property in it that was just making mine different than everybody else's pulse motor out there. Everybody's hung up on using MOSFETs and relay, whatever, right? I'm using a make and break mechanical switch. I'm getting a different effect. So
That
now,
if you're looking for really fast switching, I remember what was Jeremiah would know about this. They're switching through liquids too. Jeremiah, you remember that? And when you're doing pulse gap, when you're doing pulse gap switching, high energy stuff, and then they have to pulse it. They have a special compound. It's some kind of like a sulfur chemical liquid, and the idea is that you can pulse through it repeatedly, and it doesn't break down or change form that much.
Well, you're talking about sulfur hexafluoride suppression gas. It's a standard for arc suppression inside of contactor switches. You can compress it down to a liquid, but otherwise it stays as a compressed gas.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's an incredibly powerful material that does very quickly suppress arcs, but it doesn't switch them in the fastest amount of time. In fact, the fastest material I know of is the one with the lowest band gap transition of them all, which would be hydrogen. Now you can go with direct vacuum, which will technically give you the fastest switching possible, and there you're talking about picoseconds in the double-digit range, which is kind of freaking insane. But if you use a hydrogen switch, you can at least get into the nanosecond range.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the hydrogen. Steinmetz, he designed this special generator back in It's about 1906 time frame. And it's called the dynamotor. So it's like a generator and a motor in one, and they would submerge the entire motor into hydrogen. And they did this. It was able to keep the motor more stable, less air friction, and also keep the generator cold. So yeah, hydrogen has been used in the past in these generator systems. And apparently, they don't use the Steinmetz dynamotor. I was trying to find schematics on it. It's really hard
Dynamos
to
are
find it.
fascinating because they're DC generators that were all over the old world, like electrical grid, and used to run everything essentially. But that we a couple of channels that dig into like alternative history and just old like cool technology and stuff came up with a whole bunch of different magazine ads from like the late 1800s selling commercial or like commercialized for the average citizen's home. Like the ads were literally for like Betty Bop housewife of you connect your dynamo to your house tap or your kitchen faucet to run the dynamo to get your free electricity from running the water through it after you're done your dishes each day, and it will power. And it was to power her like nail freaking file thing that they were like also selling. It was ridiculous, but it was like I don't know. It was
Well, there was another
they
one too, the homopolar generator. They also used them in industry, apparently back in the early 1900s.
oh, it ran all industry.
For welding. While they were using the homopolar generator mainly for the welders, because they needed high current, and the homopolar generators were able to do this pretty efficiently, create enough current to create the arcs that they need to do all the arc welding. So the homopolar generator was used many years ago. Now we got modern technology where we don't need that type of a system. We use transformers and step ups and all that kind of stuff. But back in the early days, these were very common. So, and I've actually made a homopolar generator myself, and I was able to get quite a few amps out of it. Actually, it's the most viewed video on my channel. Made my own version of the end machine.
Yeah, do you mind bringing that up so we can share and play that? Let's actually take a look at that because you've actually stated with me. Yeah, it was publicly about that experiences having it cause time dilation when you had it running. Was that the machine?
I had a whole bunch of stuff running at that time. I had that running. I had the pulse generator running, and I think I even had a plasma ball in the areas. And the other thing too is I was in the basement of the house, and so I got all this closed air space, and yeah, I was getting some weird effects. I don't really want to talk about that too much on YouTube because it might get more problems. I'm already getting shadow banned already as it is. But yeah, I was getting some interesting things going on there. Let's see if I can find that video.
Yeah, that stuff usually comes out when you're dealing with static potentials.
Yeah, I had a lot of stuff going on in that room that night. It was unbelievable what I had going on in there. And it was a closed underground space, so it's like almost like in a Faraday cage, right? Let me find the video here and then I can post to a private chat and then you can maybe I was getting about 20 to 25 amps, but those generators put up very little voltage. It's in the microvolts, but the current was a lot. I have 400 videos on my channel now, so I'm just kind of scrolling through it trying to find it. But we can carry on with other stuff, and I'll post the link, BurnEye, in the private chat.
Okay, I get that loaded in a momento. I was also going to discuss a little bit of the alchemy and the plans of new experiments that I'm going to be running, developing it, testing, turning into batteries out of some of the jars and the materials, as well as I've discussed with Jeremiah. He recently encouraged me to get back on this, and it was actually the second YouTube video I ever did. And it was on Leak Project with Rex Bear, but I've yet to get back to it since. Yet it's like literally the most crucial part of my alchemy discoveries, and it's Sir Isaac Newton's color wheel of metal transmutation or transmutational metals, and that it corresponds to what I would call with Jeremiah the oxide and hydride color chart of these electrolysis or metal elements, really, and that I've been able to reproduce consistently, whether it be with just pure copper on copper, zinc on zinc, silver and silver, gold and gold. It doesn't matter what metal it is. What matters solely and keyly is the reaction that is happening within the electrolysis or the electrolysis reaction, and that you within salt water and a very small amount of electrical change can influence a substantial difference in whether you're putting out just like an oxide, dioxide, a trioxide, or hydride. Anyway,
You've got lots of different, you've got lots of different input and output chemicals, which is kind of ancillary for electrochemistry, and those things are known. What I was particularly interested in, though, is you did something.
Jeremiah,
go ahead.
I'll start demonstrating it solely, reproducing this and these experiments specifically only in distilled water, so that the specific one salt that I'll use as a standard sort of thing to start creating like pure samples of it or whatever that can then be tested and eliminates all of that. Correct.
What I'm really interested in too, though, is you had several experiments that did anomalous things that are not part of electrochemistry. And so one of those, you had been running some kind of electrolysis experiment with, I think, aluminum foil wrapped around one of the Keshe electrodes that you made. And it ended up producing this material coating, which when exposed, I forget what you did, if you put it in sunlight or if you did something to it, but I guess it had immediately caught fire or flared up or did something that was really catalytic.
That's the red mercurial state, and it's that's what Isaac Newton calls it, the red mercurial state of metal transmutations, and I believe it to be a hydride or hydroxide, but current breakthrough in metamaterials was showing, I forget what the compound was, maybe a bismuth or maybe it was phosphorus. I'll have to go back and check, but the point being, it was this red state metamaterial in cold temperatures or room temperatures or whatever, and it was like super conductive, and the main part being that it was just extra hydrogen molecules attached to the metal, and that's specifically what this alchemy is, that you can so easily, it's a whole new type of science.
Right. Well, we're used to burning hydrocarbons too. We burn candles, and we know how that goes, and we can light fuel on fire, and all those things flame out fairly slowly as oxygen reaches the reaction. So these are oxidizing reactions. In your case, what you described was something that was either self-oxidizing or it already had pre-bound, unbalanced molecular chains that were ready to go. And the energy input that it took to get it started versus how quick it went from what you described to me was something I highly encourage you to replicate. Produce that material, and here's why. If that material is in an odd electrical state, so let's say you've got an unbalanced number of valence electrons, but it's somehow bound together because it's geometrically semi-stable, and all it takes to do is destabilize it slightly. Well, that will be a highly energetic polarized state of matter, and that's very useful for electrogravitics because it probably means you have a monopolar charged material which you could pack into a bulk mass, and if you were to hit that with an electric impulse of the same polarity, you would get a repulsion force that would not be balanced. because the impulse would only occur during the time where you created it. And off of your transmission structure, the receiving material, that being this special stuff you're making, well, by the time the wave that it produced as a counter-electromotive force comes back to the source of the electric field is stopped, so there's nothing for it to interact with. So it's a one-directional or non-Newtonian force, and that's because it's an open system.
I've got, oh my goodness, another anomalous random jar video to show you right now that I just found, and its relevance being it's that red state material while in water. And so if you see all those white lines in here at the surface, that or just below the surface there at the top, that is all self-organized nanotube structures. And there's no outside electricity going into this jar at all. It's just a nano-coated triple copper coil, like the Keshi.
You got to start building the Moxie generator.
The 3 coils, and then the black nano coating outer cell, and then it's going down 1 copper wire over and down, connecting to another one of these triple solenoids underneath that has aluminum foil wrapped around it. And the bottom here, it's brown, and that's a mix of the half red particles and the half, I guess, orange copper material with it. This is not the right one that I want to show, but that's very anomalous stuff. So, backstory of this jar is that it had been sealed for about a year, and then I opened it up, and then it made all of that self-organizing stuff and started to like bubble and produce hydrogen for several days, if not longer. Frick. This is not the ones that I thought I was getting. Sorry.
If you build the Bernie, you should really start looking into the Moxie generator, because if you want to do transmutation, the Moxie generator is what you want to get into. But
Moxie is what it's called.
But you have to be careful with some of the stuff that gives off X-rays, and also some of the metals will generate radon gas. So you have to be very careful with this stuff.
Specifically why I've held off getting into any of that sort of experimenting yet, but that's literally the next stage of what I need to start doing with taking this cold fusion stuff to the next level, the low energy for sure. What does Moxie stand for again? It's another acronym for a cold fusion process, right?
Well, Fleischmann and Pons, when they were doing the cold fusion back in the early 90s, they were using a certain metal. I forget the name of it. It's something oxide, but anyways, it produces a huge amount of X-rays. So Pons and Fleischmann were getting exposed to all this X-rays coming off their device. They were creating a lot of power, but they were also blasting themselves with X-rays. That's why both of them are dead now.
I wonder if the old lead flashings from roofing would be thick enough. I have a whole box of those.
Yeah, they are, and so is the lead flashing that used to be installed in bathrooms underneath tubs.
That one I think would work as well.
I've used that quite successfully.
And the other thing too is the radon gas. You got to worry about the radon, and if you're going to do something like that, I would be doing it outside where it's a lot of ventilation, because you don't want to start inhaling radon. It's very toxic for you. So
I wouldn't do any of those experiments in my backyard or house sort of thing until I get like a lab or could go get the power source like out in the woods somewhere or something.
Like in the basement of the house where I was, we actually got a test kit, and they come in little jars, and it's got a special, I guess, material in there. When it gets exposed to radon, it will change the color, and they do a test in the lab with it. So you open up the bottle and you just set it on the counter for about 72 hours, put the cap back on, and then send it up for the lab, and then they can tell you the amount of radon gas that's accumulating in your basement. So
You don't want to do an experiment and end up sending it in. They're gonna send guys to your door thinking that
yeah, I
there's
got
like
nuclear
way
isotopes showing up in
yeah.
So in this one, is this anomalous or is this like well known that when the anode breaks, that it turns everything's called the yellow sulfur state, and literally
right.
all of the oxidized, or if it was white monoatomic state, like any other color, it all just instantly turns yellow within
Yeah,
the
that's a sign
area.
that that's kind of the first stage of reactions. There's different levels of stages of the actual reaction. Now, I also found out too, if you take like regular electrolysis and you keep using the same water over and over again, it turns into deuterium, heavy water, which I did
Oh
not
yeah,
know.
that's a major thing. That it's
So
like the times that I have produced this like second and third layers of like literally you can see it like turn into jelly, and it just
that's right.
Yeah,
looks heavier. It's way below.
That's right. Well,
absolutely.
It's nuts. I have
that's you just created deuterium, so
yeah.
or heavy water.
Now my
So
question is,
that,
once you've gotten to that stage, because I've done that many times, if you keep going, does it turn into tritium?
yeah, it should. Well, technically,
I'm
yes,
pretty sure I've gotten
because
some thought tritium too.
Okay, that's a
you're
little
getting
scary. I'll have
close
to make
to it.
sure I don't do that.
Well, yeah, yeah, you got to
Which
worry
colors
because tritium is radioactive.
It was kind of like a milky, like jelly beige.
Yeah,
When
that
I
one
was
only
done with it.
lasts for like a month to 3 months before it turns into something. Usually oxidizes into a blue or something.
Yeah,
So
I was using a spiral cell with distilled water, and I was running it through a modified Bedini circuit, and
Yeah,
wow, I made so much hydrogen. When I would light it on fire, it'd shake the windows of my house.
Jeez. Yeah, you got to be a little
so
careful with that.
It sounds like shotgun shells when it goes off. It's pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, oh, it's very fast,
really,
very fast. Oh yeah, it's like a firecracker.
Yeah, even less.
this
It's more than a firecracker because it implodes, and you can feel it in your chest when you're lighting
Yeah,
like hydrogen balls on fire. It's intense.
yeah, it creates a shockwave for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
make
we
sure your
used
windows
to
are open.
evaporate soda cans with the bookshelf capacitor bank that I had assembled when I was a little kid, living in the bedroom of my dad's house. We had a massive, stupid number of capacitors, 3 bookshelves filled from side to side with these things. And when we hit that, we used to evaporate soda cans almost entirely, except for just little pieces of the curved part on the end, which is the thickest part for the can, and sometimes the tab would survive. Anyways,
That
what
it nearly
sounds
blew
like
off the
fun.
what do you
windows.
make of this red, white, and blue? Because this is literally just a pure copper coil that is 3 triple rings wired back onto itself and curled back onto itself, that was used as a 5-volt anode for about an hour. Then I took it and I just placed it in this cup of regular water. And
Well, either one or two things.
the red,
1, your coil
white,
is American Patriot, or 2,
right?
the polarity of the electric field distribution over that gradient is causing a different particle size to predominantly be either deposited or produced. And my guess is
I
that
vote
probably your
Patriot.
larger particles are sticking to one
Yeah,
side.
I'm with Tim.
I vote Patriot.
Right?
Yeah.
Can we call it the
Patriot.
Patriot particle or the Patriot process if this turns out to be something significant? But it's that this actual red, white, and blue process always forms, and it seems to be polarized. On one end
Now,
of the field will
question.
always be red, the middle will be white, and the other end will be blue. And this is literally just copper, and you're having this magnetic polarization. Oxide,
It's
hydroxide,
obviously patriotic. It is obviously
right?
patriotic.
Do you use? Have you tried the same experiment with distilled water and get the same effect?
Oh yeah, over and over and over again. This is distilled water. I put this one in. This was actually distilled water. This one was actually distilled water because I was like, oh my God. Because the thing is it'll only stay like this while it's still reactive. Once you pull it out of water and it starts to dry out and oxidize out, then it'll form a blue, hard nano-coated oxidized copper oxide shell around the entire coil on the inside, and that this red inside, so this is red state metal, that it's like physically red, and I suspect that it actually is like in a meta state in that. The white is decay, and it's when it's like eating away process always, and then the blue is the oxidized, and it's always tries to form the final like self-organized nano lattice structure that re-encases the metals in the
You
reaction.
definitely have something going on there, Bernie, because after I was done using my cells, they look like they were deteriorated and rusted and been in there for 20 years. Yours look completely different.
Oh no, it's different things that I can form over and over again. So this right here was close. This is like a silver 1 ounce silver coin that I left the reaction going for a couple months straight, and it waxed and waned. This cloud of monoatomic silver in the silver oxidized rest of the solution would shrink as the lunar cycle waxed and waned, and it like turned into nothing. Let's see. I think I have the photo here. A couple days later. Human.
Oh, Bernie, you know what metal you should try to get a hold of if you can? Is titanium oxide.
Yes. So here you go. Here's right when like the moon was nothing at all, and you can see that there's like literally nothing that was being produced at all, and like it completely oxidized everything up. And then as the moon started to go into full again, sorry, that was a different reaction. See, every time the anode completely corrodes away and breaks off, the entire solution always turns yellow instantaneously. It's strange. Like this blue thing will instantly turn yellow once.
Do you have
Anyways,
do you have a pH meter to test it to see what the pH level of the water is after you do the experiments?
No, I need to start doing those aspects of it.
Yeah, you can order them online. They have electronic ones now that you can actually just dip in the water and it'll tell you what the
Its test has
pH.
extremely
I
strong.
use it all the time for like fish tanks and stuff.
I
But
did
is there
test
like
it,
an electronic unit now?
It shows
So
up as
here
an
you can see it's
extremely
starting
strong
to grow
base.
back a bit. That I don't know. I've never tested. It does? Okay. And then where the frick is this? Yeah. The supermoon, and it completely refilled the jar with white silver monoatomics on the full moon that was then the supermoon after it like had gone down to nothing. And then it's like when the moon was giant and it was a supermoon, it literally filled the container with the silver monoatomic the next day. Like it was crazy. So that has blown my mind, and I don't know how the moon affects silver, but it does somehow, and I don't know why the sorry, went on for a little ramble.
Well, and then there's that leftover signature remnant of where the coil used to be placed after it was removed from the system. That still left the spiral, and that means you have to disturb the water and everything in order to take it out, or you have to do something, to affect removing the coil. But it still ended up producing the spiral pattern exactly where the coil was sitting.
So no, it wasn't right where the coil was sitting. It just always happens in the center of the solution. Every time it's like I'll either add water in, or every time I will like restart the electrical connection. The first time it will turn into that spiral as it reorganizes itself.
Yeah, there's a show that you did some time back. We talked about all this in quite an extensive detail with myself and Bob Grenier, and you'd explain the whole thing, and
Yes,
with
sir.
video clips too. So,
Guys, I gotta bail out for a bit. Actually, I have to log into the other StreamYard account and set up the February conference for APAC. So
awesome, Dennis.
Awesome.
Sorry, Tim, I went on a tangent there, and I was
no worries.
with you while
Thanks
you
for
were
having
here.
me on. Thanks for having me on, man. Thanks for sending me the
Thanks for
invite.
being here. See, now I completely have a brain fart, right? Since you're about to take off, I wanted to discuss a couple of different recordings to set up with you in the future, but I'll just put it into an email
Yeah,
and
just shoot me an
trust
email.
you that way. 100%, brother.
Okay. Hey, have a good Friday night, guys.
You as well,
Thanks,
my
Tim.
friend.
Have a good one.
Yeah, why don't we hand it off to Gerald too? He hasn't gone yet.
Absolutely.
I know nothing.
Come on, let's get technical. Let's talk about
Technical about what?
let's talk about the different types of time. That's a very interesting topic to at least open people up to. That there's this concept that time is not a single construct of simply measuring the refractive index of space, but that there are different ways time can play out in various systems, in matter, in the vacuum, or even in biology. And you had a lot of insights on this. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I believe that time isn't what people think it is. It's a form of a signal, energy. Time is like, okay, so if you explain it kind of like this, right? Like each cell of the human body, if you can picture it as a sphere, and as you're living your life and you're getting older, the cells in your body are starting to deform, maybe go oblong or have some sort of deformed shape, no longer a sphere. What if you could replace those cells, or at least fill those cells back up with a form of energy that brings them back to their spherical form? And I believe that time is a form of that energy. So,
Hey,
go ahead.
question for you. Do you own a DeLorean?
A DeLorean? No.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the right answer, Gerald, is not yet.
I have a flux capacitor, though.
So you have the more important part. Now we just need to get you the DeLorean.
That's right. Yeah. And a crazy old gray-haired man. Wait, that's me. Okay, so what if time was like if it was a form of energy that you could impart into the body? So this is a big what if as a thought experiment. If you could have that energy, maybe through sound waves or different forms of well, we'll get into that later. But let's just say, for instance, as a thought experiment, you could replenish the energy in each cell of your body. It would almost be like stopping time. Because as that energy degrades in each cell, if you could replenish that energy, say daily, like let's say you sat in a box or even sat in a single room for 15 minutes a day, and that energy just imparts into each cell of your body, you would essentially be pausing time. So
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
If you'd like, I can sort of give a physics breakdown of what you just said there.
By all means.
Yeah, so if we think about the body as a finite volume in relation to the surrounding space, you have a certain volume that you displace when you sit in a tub of water, right? So there's only so much of you, so much matter that you're made of to go around, finite count. If you were to increase the energy that's contained in that matter, since time is directly correlated with energy density, and because as we increase the energy density in some finite volume of space, time slows down in that space, as seen from the outside from a reference, meaning a photon takes a longer period of time to travel through a space with more electromagnetic energy. Ironically, for that space on the inside, time is flowing much faster there. So although it looks like a photon has to redshift as it passes through this space of more energy density and then blue shifts back out of it, in this case, from the inside, if that's where you are, your body is the energy accumulator. It is the storage mechanism. As you increase your energy density, your time speeds up, time outside slows down. And by relation, I'm sure that, you know, most people in the audience, most people have probably experienced a traumatic event or, you know, a sudden stimulus, like say you're in an automotive accident or your car is sliding or there's a sudden threat or somebody jump scares you and your time slows down. It feels like it almost stops. Well, what's happening is your neurosynapses are firing like crazy. Your brain's trying to process this new stimulus in order to guarantee that you survive. But that creates a huge amount of electrical energy in your brain and in your body. Well, what if all that electrical energy actually slowed down your local refractive index by increasing its energy density so that you could think physically faster? Your second is only a quarter of a second to the outside world, for example. Well, this is actually a real physical fact that we can process information many, many times faster than we could otherwise continuously process it. Our brains have built up stored little reservoirs of neurotransmitters and other necessary chemicals like sugars and stuff that are in the brain and on other parts of the body ready for fast delivery. And it utilizes them anytime that you are in dire straits. So if we could say simulate that same kind of effect, where instead of having to get this adrenal response, we pumped in the energy from the outside, from an electromagnetic coil system, or from some photonic stimulation, or from sound, or even more. What if we combined all of them together? Who knows what we could do?
Well, it's funny you say that because I am working on a device that does that very same thing. Sound, light, and energy all imparting into the body through a tube that you stand in, and you're actually surrounded by plasma that dances around you. It's kind of an interesting concept. I can't wait to show it off.
I like it. I like the sounds of it. It sounds very similar to what I saw eventually get developed through the Keshe Foundation, but
if somebody else did it before me, by all means, I'm not looking to make a mill.
Connecting the two types. It's figuring this technology out. It's verifying that this is legitimate stuff, and there's actually many others working on it and having different parts of it figured out, and bringing this all together and making it materialize into real working systems, which
if
we
it
know
works, I'm gonna disseminate the plans immediately for free. Everybody should have one in their house. You know what I mean? Like, why not? You break an arm, you go stand in the tube for 15 minutes a day, and it heals in 3 days rather than in 6 weeks. That's something everybody needs.
So look at these nanotubes. These are just copper. See, this is the eroded copper wire between, and then the nano freaking tubes that grew and self-organized. This was just in a couple hours. This stuff grew. It was crazy. That's just solely copper.
And you're using electricity to do that, right?
Just 5 volts.
Yeah, not much, just enough to degrade it just a little faster than it normally would, or maybe impart energy into it. Just curious, that's all. It's amazing how all that stuff works. As we were talking about time, and people, you know, when they talk about time travel, if energy is if time is a form of energy that can be imparted biologically into the body, then it stands to reason that our bodies could actually run these UAPs or devices, call them what you will, through the very consciousness that we have. You become part of the ship. Your energy becomes part of the ship of the energy.
That's exactly what Keshe also says and teaches, and many have described, and you're bang on with it, Gerald.
Well, in the Vedic text, they talked about how the Vimanas were driven by pilots that literally drove from the spirit. So what if that means they're actually connecting to the human body? Call it through the spirit, through your consciousness, through your will, call it what you will. But if that's the case, then you would become part of the ship. The ship would become alive because it would be part of you. Anything that happened to the ship, you'd feel it. It would almost be like an extended version of your
Oh man,
nervous system.
there was one, I swear, like NASA dude, UFO guy, whistleblower supposed, that I swear I heard him tell of a story of like they brought him in to check out like this. He was just like in his young teens or something, but like some protege kid at that point, that they brought him in to see this, like if he could figure out the skin of this spaceship or something like that in some freaking hangar, and that like the kid witnessed when like they like heard it, like trying to like take a sample out, it's like everybody felt pain or something.
That's interesting. It makes you wonder if the energy that was in that ship was actually consciousness of somebody. I mean, I don't know, that's a leap, but a little bit of woo there, but you know, it's an interesting thought.
Well, in the physical sense, if you have a bunch of matter that's in what we call a coherent state, so that all of the matter acts like one single atom, if you do anything to any part of that entire craft, it gets distributed over the entirety of all the craft, and not just that, but it's done through field forces, so it also gets distributed to everything surrounding it. You can't basically punch a hole in the craft because you'd have to destroy the entire thing. And it's sort of like, think about it in this way. It's like a non-Newtonian fluid. If you poke your finger into a non-Newtonian fluid, you can push your finger right through, no problem. It feels like a gel, or like a thick pudding or something.
Like, well, you can't harvest like the heart or the organs of an animal to eat it and have it still living, sort of thing. Kind of the ship's almost alive and how it's built, works, and operates. Maybe
the ship's resonating. So the whole idea is, instead of a resonance,
in that specific case, I'm saying, not all of them. Sorry.
When you have a system of resonance, you have stored energy. The whole idea of a standing wave is that you have tremendously high amplitudes, abnormally high amplitudes, and you have the same fixed frequencies. So you have so much energy stored up in the form of an oscillation that's constantly changing over time. It's not like a capacitor. It's not just like an inductor, but this is a multi-tier circuit where you have one unit being exchanged for the other. You're flipping your magnetic field for your electric field and back and forth again. And so we call that an LC. Well, when you have one of these resonant systems, it starts to cohere all of that material, because inside, well, for all the material that's carrying the current, its time is flowing more slowly than it is for, its time is flowing more quickly than it is for everything else on the outside. So it's going to be separated. It's in a different frame of reference. And that allows it to have different physics variables that wouldn't normally be seen.
Okay, so I've been kind of wondering lately, as a different frame of reference between, say, the person on the inside of the bubble and the person on the outside of the bubble, would the potential difference actually just, I wonder if that's the defining factor of that. Like almost like charge separation. It's needed in that whole sequence of events.
It shows up in every single construct of transmitted energy. If you have a laser on the inside that's slightly yellowish, and you produce that laser beam from the inside of this field, as it exits to the outside, it's going to become red. If you have a blue laser beam, it's going to become teal, or towards that direction. It's basically going to redshift as it exits that field. Same thing if you have a laser going from the outside to the inside, it's going to actually it's going to blue shift as it enters the field. So a red laser beam will become slightly more yellow. Teal laser beam will become slightly more blue. That whole concept also applies for electric fields. If you have, say, 100,000 volts charged to a terminal that's just sitting there isolated from ground, electrostatically stored, and that's on the inside, well, if you hold on just a second, gotta hit this thing. It's an electronic device screen up. Well, your 100,000 volt terminal on the inside and your 100,000 volt terminal on the outside, you charge them up to opposite polarities. You measure them. One's positive 100 kV, one's negative 100 kV. Well, when you change the time around the one on the inside, its voltage is going to suddenly start showing up a little bit differently. The voltage that you'll detect on the inside terminal is going to drop. It's going to slowly decrease down to the point where you can't detect it anymore. And the terminal on the inside will feel the force of the terminal on the outside, where it would normally be 100,000 volts opposite charge. It's going to see that as going up to 200,000, 300,000. It's going to see that as 1,000,000 volts. As its potential drops down, as seen from the outside, it's going to see all other potentials on the outside increase. And so now you have the ability to accelerate really fast, to have really powerful forces with virtually no inertia.
Very interesting. It's all interconnected. I love it. I love science, I'm telling you.
It's all
great.
balance and exchange at the end of the day.
Yep.
It's amazing.
If you take something, you have to give something else up. And if you increase time somewhere else, you have to decrease it respectively on the outside environment.
That's awesome. What are we seeing on screen here?
That's my end machine, my version of the end machine. It's all 3D
nice.
printed. I made that go well over about 2 years ago. It's the most viewed video on my channel. Got over 6,000 views on that. So yeah, that was pumping about 25 amps at about 40 millivolts, 40 to 60 millivolts. So
Nice.
very little voltage, but it created a lot of current. And using those big fishing magnets, the 3-inch fishing magnets, they lift like 500 plus pounds. They're like scary strong.
With those end machines, can't you step up your voltage and decrease your current, considering the current's so high?
Yeah, there is a way of doing it. What you have to do, instead of using a solid ground magnet, you have to build it in like segments, like a star formation going all the way around. And the contacts, it will basically create almost like an AC type current. And then all you have to do from there is patch it into a step up transformer, and you got usable power.
Right.
But, like Burst upon this machine, the one he made weighed 1,000 pounds. It was a pretty large machine. So he was getting 60 volts at 2,500 amps.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of power.
That's a lot of power, yeah.
And he was threatened big time, so he buggered off to, I believe, the Netherlands. And that's where later he died there. But yeah, he was getting some big flack for that machine. They did not want that machine to come out.
Well, it's crazy. Go ahead.
The original machine was called the Sunburst machine. And that was created in California in the valley there by a couple of guys. And he kind of got the idea of trying to step it up, make it a lot bigger. So he was working on that in the late 70s, early 80s. So we're going back quite a few years. But yeah, it produced a huge amount of power, but still a lot of skepticism.
Isn't he the guy that put the end machine in the car and drove the car on it?
No, that was Joseph Newman.
No, Joseph.
Was it Joseph Newman put his? Yeah, he put it in a pickup truck, and it ran the pickup truck.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I was talking about somebody else, though. Maybe I'm getting it mixed up. It's not the end machine. I just find it really funny how all these free energy devices that actually work, the people get run out, or the systems themselves get bought and shelved. And now look at the way the world is and what it's going through. And even at the other side of the world, they're coming up with batteries that apparently last 40 years now. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about that. I don't even know how good they are, really. But
yeah, they're the new LTO batteries. They're kind of like a battery capacitor. They're pretty pricey. You can't get them, but they're very pricey. They have a capacitance of a battery, but they operate much like a capacitor.
Interesting stuff, I tell you.
Yeah.
It makes
Well,
one wonder, where are all these free energy devices that we know work? Like,
all
I
those
don't know.
guys are dead now. Most of them are dead now.
Yeah, but the devices themselves were built. They were out there.
Yeah,
Whether they were shelved or not, I mean, they're still out there. If they were destroyed, they're destroyed, of course. But I don't know. It just makes one wonder if it had been done before, it could be done again.
sure. You just got to get the plans and build it.
Or you got
So
to
I tried to,
figure it out.
yeah, like I just wanted to make a small benchtop model just to see proof of concept if it was actually capable of producing a large amount of amps. So for the amount of power I was putting in, I was getting a huge amount of current coming out. So yeah,
That's an awesome little device. Jeremiah,
yeah, I
didn't
got
you
a
say
lot of,
you had something? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, that one there has got me the most views still to this day. That video has get me the most views. Seems like a lot of people were into it.
That's awesome. Most views I
Yeah,
got are ones where I'm making fun of Trudeau.
yeah. See that device that I made, the bearings that I used in that one were all ceramic. You can't have any steel bearings, otherwise it just bogs the machine down and cogs up the wheel. So that thing ran really good. It ran very true. It didn't vibrate. I had it balanced really well. And the case I 3D printed. It took me like a month to get the case right, but everything was really high tolerance on that, and I got great results.
Still have it?
Yeah, I still have it. Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Wasn't Jeremiah, didn't you say you had something you're working on that? I don't know if he's there still or if he had to go out for a minute.
Yeah, it's
Maybe not.
maybe a washroom break.
Probably.
Yeah, but there is a lot of machines that are very real. See, the only problem with the end machine for a long time was you couldn't get enough voltage out of it. But there is a way to do it. Actually, Aaron Murakami and Peter Lindemann tackled that issue and actually got pretty good results. That they're actually able to run like a coil from a car, patch it through that, and actually light up. I think it was a neon bulb they were lighting up. So they were getting over 90 volts. 90 volts at, I don't know what the current was. It had to have been pretty decent.
Huh.
I know
That's
mine.
interesting.
I know my machine. The highest I ever got on that one there was 30 amps. So
See, it's just too bad you couldn't tap the amps with the volts that you need, right?
You
well,
can, but
Zelda
you
would
do
be
have to
fine.
use an external component, that being a ferromagnetic core. I tested it using the primary winding or using the filament windings of a microwave oven transformer, which would normally generate about 30 or 40 amps at up to, just a few volts. So they say that normally you run like 10 volts at 3 amps or something like that, but they can do a lot more than that. So if you have just a few volts above their normal output, 2 to 3 volts, then you can saturate the core of that transformer over a long enough period of time where when you do disconnect, instead of just getting this useless back EMF that would blast everywhere, the inductance slows it down so that you can use the secondary output voltage if you need high voltage, or you can use the main primary windings, your 120 turns in the United States or 240 turns in European nations and in Canada, to tap a useful amount of line voltage. So just modulated at 60 hertz, have enough current to saturate that input coil. But it's one way
Interesting.
to convert it. You do need inductance. It helps.
That's interesting. That's something I might look into in the future. It's just I got a few things I have to finish first.
Hollow core generators are fantastic, and Tesla's design was by far the most fantastic of them. He found a way to create specifically angled slices or slots in the core that would eliminate any kind of drag or lens forces. And it's a very, very hard to find document. The only reason that I even know about it is because our brilliant researcher, Taryn Earthling, who maintains the database, found this stuff and brought it to my attention. And I
Yeah, he
showed you that
rocked.
document, G, and I remember when you looked at it, you're like, wow.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. I can't wait to delve into actually making the rest of the devices that I've found through Tesla and all the documents that have increased the details on the devices that have been put out. You guys, like Terran Earthling, his database is profound. It's amazing. The amount of information I've gotten from there. Okay, go ahead.
I wonder if I can find that. I'm going to see if I can maybe find that Tesla document that actually shows how he made his modifications to break the lens force.
Yeah, didn't he have cuts in his laminated steel a certain way? Almost look like a pattern.
Yeah, he had phi cut slices into the disc that took a parabolic curve, decreasing in phi to straight as they entered the center hub. But they didn't go all the way to the center. They were just in the part of the disc that would normally be responsible for experiencing the lens forces, specifically the part of the disc where the magnetic field yoke is closed.
Yeah, by so doing, he'd actually change the flux.
Right. He got all the same current out of it.
Yep.
Given input RPMs, the motor doesn't really feel the load, mainly with homopolar generators. The motor is not the problem. It's the friction to overcome, because you have to take the current off the outside of these discs, which effectively have a huge amount of current and very little voltage to tap. So you've got to draw all that off. And that was Bruce De Palma's main solution. He used mercury, a sliding mercury slip ring. It's actually kind of an old technique. It's been around for a while, but he found a nice, easy way to do it, where he's got a mercury pool on the bottom just high enough for the edge of the disc protruding to start dragging it around this restrained ring. So you've got like baffles on both sides to catch any splash. And then he would add more mercury once it got spinning up in order to fully fill the entire volume. And when it spun down, it would go into an overflow tank, and then he would have to start the process over if he ever started it back up again. But no big problem. He was claiming 5 times out versus what he got in, and it got him killed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he got threatened a lot when he was in the U.S. That's why he took off to the Netherlands. And that was pretty
So
much
dumb.
it for him.
We're about to go to WAR because of the very crap that they're trying to keep rolling. Meanwhile, free energy's been literally hidden and around for what, 50, 60 years? It's insane.
Longer than that. I would say pushing 100 years plus.
Oh, probably. If you go back into Tesla's day and age. I'm just talking even the recent.
Even longer than that, I'd say.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you go back into Tartaria, for sure.
Yeah.
And before that, like all the way back, like Egypt, Sumer, Babylonia. So here's what really like drives me as well is the Baghdad battery, and just how it's identical to a lot of the electrolysis stuff I'm doing are damn similar, and then tying it all in, and got to do more with the Isaac Newton writings, because
I have a theory what they were using the Baghdad battery for. They were using it for their own alchemy experiments, doing electrolysis. That's the only thing I could see them actually using that for. Yeah,
because they had lighting
and stuff. Maybe they were also doing like plating, stuff like that, anodizing and stuff like that.
Or making colloidals and monoatomics everywhere.
Sure.
I don't think they were using it for lighting, because according to the theory, the pyramid created the power for lighting. So the Baghdad battery was for something separate. So you guys could be absolutely right on that.
They could be doing electroplating. They could be doing transmutation of metals. I think that's what the battery was for.
It's an
It
interesting
just
thought.
makes sense. And if they were doing electrolysis, they're creating hydrogen gas. So if they're making hydrogen gas,
Exactly. That's another key component of it. You're getting two different or three different products out of this very simple and easy to do, easy available process. And if they were mass producing, everyone had those jars, Mike. You're bang onto it for doing it.
right. So if they're doing electrolysis and they're getting hydrogen out of it, well, if you put that in a balloon, well, now you have a flying device. Now some
and
of the old,
especially if they were able to do what Jeremiah did, in that this year we're going to have to produce a more stable next generation reaction and reactor, but from electrolysis, where you have the bigger arc that turns into the white plasma that then transmutes the hydrogen from the electrolysis into helium. Then it's like if you can master both of those very easily and mass produce both hydrogen and helium and oxygen, all from the very simple.
So who knows? Like maybe maybe that's how those Vimanas were flying. Maybe they were filled with a lot of hydrogen or helium.
It's definitely how the airship, the
right?
The Bergs, the Hindenburg. What were they called?
I personally think it created a sympathetic resonance with Earth and was able to push off of it. But that's just a theory. I got nothing to base it on other than Vedic texts. But I don't know. Again, right? We need to build one. But I mean, who's got the material to build a Vimana? Or the plans are out there. The Vedic, like you can get your hands on the Vedic text. So
I've got most of it. It just depends how much I want to play around with many pounds of mercury.
Yeah, well,
exactly. We're working on it. Coming up with the game plans and the cores and the flux capacitors and the warp drives and the Goivens and the Hoivens and
the Oivin and the Claving. I love it.
Right. What was I setting up there? Continue, Gerald. I'm gonna be in the background wiring some jars up with some salt water and making the opposite of a bomb. Even though, so here I can be, the Canadian dumbass, non-dumbass, making hydrogen electrolysis at home and smoking pot next to it doesn't explode you. I have been doing it safely and on camera now for streaming for 3 years. So I'm going to take my smoke break and be right back. I was going to load this Army radio train filming video, if you're down, of radiotronics, or should I just let you guys continue talking? What do I do?
Well, that's fine. That's up to you. Is there another subject that you wanted to tackle there, Jeremiah or Mike? Or
I just sent out the inquiry, but I think he's asleep tonight. So I'm just opening it up to see when or where he sent me this document. I'm gonna try to pull that up. In fact, he just sent me a whole bunch of like gold here, and some of the names of these things. Let's see, coherent terahertz sources, designs for electron beam wigglers, secrets of electron-positron pairs. This stuff is juicy.
Sounds juicy.
Oh, heck yeah. He's even got one in here on how to cancel all magnetic fields from a magnetic coil system.
Yeah, funny you say that. I wonder, once you do that, what's the overall outcome? Like, what's the benefit from it? Because
the benefit is the energy is trapped. in order for an inductor to work, and a lot of people may not even realize this, but inside your laptop or your router or even the transformers that you charge your cell phone with, there are little inductors. They're generally open cores. So in order for them to operate, they broadcast a large magnetic field outside of themselves and encompass that volume of space. With these systems, you compress all the flux into only the finite space that the coil contains. So all of the energy that you put in as it ramps up, as your amplitude increases, especially with an oscillator circuit, it can't just simply continuously expand out or reach a certain information horizon size that's balanced with the outside environment. Instead, it just gets trapped, so time changes there. And that's getting into the boundaries of how do you start to screw with time? Well, you trap a bunch of electromagnetic energy in a resonant system, for starters.
Right. Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, as far as getting into it, I mean, that's where you'd start, right? You want to at least get good at creating resonant oscillators or get really good at capturing single pulses.
That's interesting. Very interesting. I just got a bunch of new transistors from old amplifiers I'm hoping to use in my next circuit, considering I've blown every one of them that I've been using.
Yeah.
This one's
That's me.
good for 220 volts, 15 amps. So I'm hoping I can play with it a little at least.
Oh, I'd imagine at least you get something out of it. You probably want to protect it, though. I mean, definitely neon bulb protect it with a chain of 2.
Yep.
Because you've got the current, you're not going to ever overcurrent that thing in any circumstance, but by all means, you got to voltage protect it. And protect
definitely.
the gate, too.
The which?
The gate. It's a MOSFET, you said, or is it a transistor?
It's a transistor.
Okay, so then, yeah, you don't need to connect, you don't really need to protect the base then, because it's going to be kind of self-limited as long as you...
it's an NPN. That's...
Yeah, if you clamp the collector to emitter, then you should be good.
Yep. I use a modified Bedini circuit for the most part, and there's a neon and 2 diodes in there. Yeah, it usually works.
Yeah. The neon goes on, you're getting close to a threshold where you're going to have to back off.
You know what? Here's the issue. When I have my setup going, at certain frequencies, anything past 261 hertz, frankly, my neon turns on instantly. So I figured out a way of draining the power out of the circuit to the point where I can balance how much is in there as it's being created, right? So I can pull a load off the back end and still pull loads off the coil.
Yeah, that's right. Like create like a ballast, right?
Yeah, kind of. Speaking of ballast, that Moxie reactor, I have the 1,000 watt HPS.
That's what you need.
Power, the power supply for that.
Oh my god, I'm so mad right now. I literally had a fucking full garage of those units and like all the grow equipment that went along with it that I legally owned that recently I don't know what happened. I'm pretty sure. Well, anyways, we'll just say a fire happened and I lost a best friend over it, and I never got any compensation for it. And I always held on to them, being like, I knew they're going to be crucial for the experiments that I have. But the good thing is I still have like 3 to 5 of them somewhere.
Yeah, they're handy. They're
so
handy.
I
still use them for growing food.
Real experiments.
Hey, I still use them for growing food. Use 1 HPS 1,000 watt and 1,000 watt metal halide, and it gives those 2 offset, the blue and the red shift kind of thing in the room. Plants love it, man. My basil just grows like mad. It's insane.
So for electroculture and agricultural alchemy experiments going forward next year, I'm going to include this really caustic, toxic device, but once it's cleaned up, that's just one way of nano coating, according to Keshi. And Why I keep saying Keshi is because it's like all of like your guys' biggest like discoveries and stuff are like just confirm other things I've heard and seen, and it's just wild. So I'm gonna start testing the one coil. And Jeremiah asked me to do some how-to videos, so it's like I'll start with this thing and show the process of how you make it. But one of the key aspects is it's like I've had this triple wound solenoid coil sitting in the caustic continuously for like a couple of years now. So it's actually built like the craziest big outer nano casing, but the next step is very crucial. When you take it out of the solution and to let it dry, you have to have it connected with like an electrical direction and certain specific wavelength that you want it to form and like create that nano structured magnifying shell at. So it's like we'll save that for a private recording sort of thing and kind of go over it together. But yeah.
Yeah, that
Sounds
sounds
good.
good. I'm sure we can figure out what it needs to be stimulated with, but you obviously have the original documents on that. I'm sure they tell you what you're supposed to pump into it.
And he's gone.
Yeah, well, that's typical. You probably heard me though.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting week. I gotta apologize to the audience though, because there was a few updates I was supposed to do that I did not get finished. So hopefully next Friday, if you're still doing the same extraordinary inventors, League of Extraordinary
Free
Inventors,
Energy Friday, Mike Faraday Research with the League of Extraordinary Inventors collaboration. We'll try to figure it out, and also to organize it that it'll just be set up to go at, is it 9 p.m. Eastern each week? So 6 p.m. Pacific is what we'll get it set and aimed and start scheduled at that time each week.
well,
And
next week I'll have experiments to do, like to show. Like I'll be able to show the scooter running live. I'll be able to show the alternator generator running live, and I'll probably do a coil experiment, but I'm not going to promise that because I'm still working on rebuilding the circuits that I keep blowing up.
Yeah.
right, that's part of the scientific process and discovery.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking of building a rotary spark gap. Maybe that might help. I'm not sure yet, though.
So this is something that I'm currently working on. We have a private research group, and one of our people in there, Simon, is a genius CAD wizard and 3D printer expert. So he's able to pump out files for almost any project
Shout
that we
out
need.
Simon C, and hope you're doing well, brother. Did actually send Simon the link for this, but sadly wasn't able to make it. Also, Taryn Earthling, I sent to the beginning, but is sick with the flu and also not here. But I believe is responsible for the file you currently have up. Hope they're all feeling better.
What is this? This is interesting.
It's a very interesting phenomenon. This guy, Charles Morton, discovered when he was playing around with a Van de Graaff generator that if he had suspended some object stationary in relationship to Van de Graaff, and he put that Van de Graaff on a moving platform, that let's say he lets the Van de Graaff sit in X position wherever it is, and he's got a ball hanging, and it's say 1 foot away. Well, he turns the Van de Graaff on. Let's say it attracts to the Van de Graaff, and it's now hanging 6 inches away. Well, what he notices is that if he pushes the whole entire generator towards the ball that's hanging, the ball has mass, so it should stay in place, and the motion forward of the big ball on the Van de Graaff that's charged, it shouldn't create enough airflow to push that ball in any direction. In fact, as that ball has mass that's sitting there, it should, as the moving Van de Graaff gets closer to it, decrease the space between them, so the attraction force gets stronger. But instead, what he notices is that just the setup electric field between the stationary ball and the moving ball will create a relationship between each other, a standing wave. So if he moves the moving ball towards the stationary ball, the stationary one experiences a pushing force during only the time that there's an acceleration on the moving ball. And if there is another wall behind it that's attracted, it won't experience a repulsion. Instead, it gets attracted even more strongly than it was before, which is also strange. So he went through and did a series of experiments. One of them was he just had a spark discharge through the center of a glass tube and hit a target plate. And he noticed that at the end of the target plate, there was this strange beam that was produced. It could push a force on small objects or on pieces of paper. You could feel it with your hand. And this is very much like the Podkleinoff impulse, gravity impulse beam. But it's stupidly simple. So no complicated vacuum equipment, superconductors, or anything. Just a high voltage, infinite impedance terminal with a spark discharge going to a target plate, just like your classic X-ray machine. In this case, though, he's identified this strange phenomenon. Electrons that accelerate in one direction, say that if this is negatively charged, he gets a pushing force out this beam in this direction. But if he charges this ball positively, when this spark discharges, it zaps from the plate to the ball, and it creates a pulling force. Beam shape's basically the same. He goes on to try and figure out how he can utilize this effect by creating a sort of plate and antenna configuration with a little spark gap discharge. Well, ultimately, he's idealized this design sometime down the line. He's built many versions of these things, and so he builds what he calls the pulse device. And that would be this one here. The pulse device is effectively the idealized phenomena that he noticed with the Van de Graaff generator. But in this case, it utilizes a ideal capacitor arrangement where there's an inside ball and an outside ball, and they are nested in each other. So you've got this hemispherical shape with the cup extended and this ball on the inside. And then this thing that looks like a thermometer here, this top part, this is an antenna. And so when a spark discharges from the bottom of the inside ball to the edge of the outside ball, all the potential is suddenly neutralized. But this antenna was charged in relation to the surrounding space. So when that pulse discharges, this electric field, all these lines that we're seeing here in this diagram, those field lines expand out to infinity in order to neutralize the sudden change in the electric field. And so there is a force that's created as these waves basically fold in and compress or expand out to infinity, depending on the polarity. This is what the device actually looks like. And I was trying to figure out, what the heck did he do?
Kind of bell shape.
It is. It's a bell shape. I'm thinking this to me looks like kind of like a mixing bowl that he might have modified. It's got the lip and everything.
Kind of like, or a bell, or one of those old aquanautic frickin' bells that they'd walk around on the bottom of the sea with. The
Right.
first mini.
So here we can see, like at the end, there's the little corona suppression ring, and this has got a hole going straight through up to the ball, which is right around this area. So a spark discharges from the inside, jumps over to that ring, and then out this antenna that we see protruding, the one that is being fed high voltage charge, there's a big pulse that comes shooting back, and it heads straight out the end, goes straight past the end and into any objects that are nearby. Now, he was saying that things would lose weight when being hit with this beam, whatever comes out of this. And you can see they've got a pretty massive amount of power input here. They've got a huge high voltage cage with transformer and isolation, and he would fire this around 1,000 times a second. So he would have a semi-continuous force. Well, anyways, I went to the thrift store the other day and got a little aluminum cup that's the exact correct aspect ratio. The back end was flattened so it could sit on the table, but I pounded that out and drilled out the hole for the corona ring. Then Simon made this particular part here that goes on the inside, which holds the inside ball, and then the rest just has to be filled with a high K dielectric. Here he's talking about using paraffin wax, which is okay, but I've got way better stuff to use that he didn't have access to at the time, because this is actually pretty old work. It's a simple device. It produces the same phenomena as Podkleinoff's impulse beam without any of the necessary resources or complexity. And I am shocked and amazed that if I look this up on YouTube or anywhere else online, it seems that 0 people have ever bothered to try and attempt this and publicly post their results anywhere, or even post their failed attempts. Like there's been Zilch, nothing. So I'm like, there's no way I could just keep on avoiding this forever. I had already built a previous version. I know what I did wrong and why.
Or it is more likely one of those devices that works that every time something pops up, it gets expunged.
It's just too simple though. And I can't believe for something that's this basic. I mean, all we have is a high voltage power supply, a cup, a ball, and a rod. And then yeah, you fill the space between them with something, whatever. But that's it. It's like 4 or 5 parts, and none of them are expensive. And like I said, I got them at the thrift store. I think I've got like $6 into this project so far. So, but I mean, it takes a lot of time. It's time intensive, but it's not expensive. So that's what I had to share. Anyways, I wanted to just show you. This is what I'm currently working on, and I started a couple
Looking
days
forward
ago.
to your results. That looks amazing.
I'm looking forward to the results too. At least it's finally time somebody tried this.
Damn straight. It doesn't look difficult at all.
No, I can't wait to see what you do with your bell. You've got a fantastic framework.
Yeah, I've been studying. That's part of one of the experiments I've been finishing. But I've been working on something that is directly connected to the bell. So I'm trying to finish that to get an understanding of why I'm seeing what I'm seeing. And I, like I said before, when I get to that full understanding, I'm going to release everything I have. I'm going to give it to everybody. I don't care.
Oh yeah.
There's
a lot of this stuff that should be done that's just being ignored because I guess it seems too simple. I feel like a lot of people have a preference for ignoring the simple things because if nothing that simple could have possibly been avoided or ignored this long. It's just ignored because it doesn't work, right? But then you go to look up why it doesn't work, and there's like 0 attempts at even explaining it. So in those kinds of cases, like, okay, clearly nobody's looked at this because they have a preference for complexity. They want those extra parts and those buzzwords. I guess it makes it feel more genuine, more authentic, but the truth is none of that crap really matters. I mean, the universe doesn't care. Physics doesn't care.
Yeah.
Nope, just facts.
That's why I keep my motor so simple. You know, the whole schematic it's elementary. It's like, you know, something a school kid can, you know, throw together. And it works.
And I apologize, too, for getting into the technical jargon sometimes. I really get heavy on it and can drone on.
It's okay, man. It's documenting it for explaining out the facts and the process and how you get to the next step and how it all works. It needs to be. And I apologize for bringing up what looks like a crack pipe, but no, this is a plasma pipe. And this is the BurnEye bonus to end it off with. Shout out to Periscope Films. We're watching a U.S. Aeronautics Department to the U.S. Navy Department transfer of technology engineering video from the 40s. I believe this is so originally when I first found this video, I hope this is the original one and it has this segment where it goes to like the 5th explanation of the plasma bulb antenna, and they wire it as like a 3-phase with a grid screen in the middle of the plasma tube, and that 3rd phase goes up to a aerial antenna and then down to the ground, connected to the ground, and then you run your regular electrical circuit out of the 2 ends of the plasma tube the other way, and that apparently with this 3rd aerial to ground energy capture, it gave it exponential over unity production. And I hope to God this is the version that has still includes it, because every time I try to find it, it seems to be it plays to number 4 and then just ends like the 5th doesn't exist and people claim I'm crazy. So
well, before you start that, I have to kind of bail because I got to get up and cook for 200 people tomorrow. So
well, bless you, and your family or army that you are feeding, good sir, or the children. Probably lots of children in there, whichever way it is.
More than
Not
likely,
saying you have a child army. Don't go there. Love you, brother.
just what I need. More headache. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, it's a contract that I'm doing. So yeah.
Well, man,
So,
good luck with your work, G. You're doing a fantastic job. Keep it up, and I'm
yes,
hoping for
you
more
too.
updates.
Definitely. Next week I'll give updates on 3 different things that I've got complete. I just wasn't able to do the updates this Friday. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Mike, for the invite.
Yep.
And we'll see you all next Friday with live experiments.
God
Have a
bless.
great week,
Right.
everyone.
Sounds good. Thanks,
You
Joe.
too. All right. Any last subject words, or shall we play drum roll?
Let's
Is
hit it.
it the full
Yeah,
video?
let's hit it.
Vacuum tube
Let's see it.
to modern high-power transmission with its great water-cooled tube, radio has shown
Can you
constant
hear?
progress. Sturdy, efficient tubes make possible our
Yeah,
modern
but
military
damn, that
sets.
tubey was holding.
These tubes serve in both receiving and transmitting installations. High above the earth, the pilot keeps in radio communication with units of his squadron and with his base. Radio is today playing a major military role on a worldwide front. Its effective utilization demands an understanding of the scientific principles made use of in the vacuum tube. Some materials, such as copper, electricity, and are known as conductors. Others, glass for example, do not readily conduct electricity and are known as insulators. A conductor contains a relatively large number of free electrons, all of which are constantly in motion. When a voltage is applied, electrons are forced through a conductor, producing current flow. The movement of free electrons in a conductor may be accelerated by the application of heat to the substance of which they are a part. If the temperature of a metal is increased enough to cause the metal to glow, some electrons will gain enough momentum to cause them to break away from the metal. They return, however, due to molecular attraction. In many radio tubes, the same action takes place when a filament is heated by a current of electricity. In the open filament type of tube, when the wire filament begins to glow, it gives off a cloud of electrons. They swarm about the filament, leaving it and returning to it at high velocity. Although pictured here, electrons actually are invisible. Many modern tubes have an indirectly heated source of electrons. The heater, made of tungsten wire, is surrounded by a thin metal sleeve. This sleeve, or cathode, is coated with oxides of barium and strontium. When heated, it becomes the source of electrons in the tube. Here we see the cathode of a tube after the glass bulb and other elements have been removed. This oxide-coated sleeve, or cathode, contains the heating element inside. The heater is insulated from the sleeve. The heated cathode, with its swarm of electrons, is surrounded by a larger tube element called the plate. These two parts, the cathode and the plate, are the principal elements of the diode tube. All tubes contain these two essential elements. Sturdy tubes, each with cathode and plate, serve our military transmitting and receiving sets. All types of radio tubes are designated by definite symbols. A circle on the wiring diagram indicates the glass or metal envelope surrounding the tube elements. In the simplest form of tube, the filament cathode is represented by an inverted V. The plate or anode is designated by a straight bar within the circle. This symbol represents a diode or two-electrode rectifying tube. It is equipped with an indirectly heated cathode. Wires connecting the tube with various parts of a circuit are represented here by straight lines drawn to the several tube elements. When the cathode of a diode tube is heated by an electric current passing through the heater, electrons are driven out from the cathode. With the plate uncharged or of minus potential, these electrons stay near the cathode or return to it. However, if the electrons being negative rush to the positive plate at high velocity. The electron flow from the cathode is largely controlled by the voltage on the plate. Some electrons lacking sufficient velocity do not reach the plate. This is called space charge. The electrons remain between cathode and plate, hindering electron flow. However, increased plate voltage overcomes much of the retarding effect of this space charge. A strong negative charge on the plate may stop all electron flow. Vacuum tubes are made in a variety of sizes and corresponding capacities. In an experimental circuit, the heater of the tube is attached to a storage or A battery. The cathode and plate are connected to a B battery so that the plate is positively charged. The A battery current heats the cathode, which in turn gives off electrons. A current flows from cathode to plate and around through the B battery back to the cathode and across to the plate again. This is plate current. This current may be measured by placing an ammeter in the circuit. If we increase the voltage on the plate, the ammeter shows an increase in current. Increasing plate voltage by another step leads to another increase in plate current. However, when the plate voltage is made still higher, no change is seen in plate current. We have reached the limit of the tube. This limit, known as saturation, is the point at which all available electrons are attracted to the plate. The effect of plate voltage upon the number of electrons reaching the plate may be charted. Increasing the plate voltage results in an increasing number of electrons, or plate current. This increase continues to the saturation. The diode tube furnishes direct current in many radio installations. If an alternator is attached to the plate and the cathode of a diode tube, the plate will be charged first positive and then negative. A rectified current results. Electrons are attracted from the cathode to the plate and not in the opposite direction. The resulting plate current is direct current. In such a circuit, the current flowing from the plate is a pulsating current, flowing when the plate is positive, stopping when it is negative. Thus, the diode tube may be used to supply direct pulsating current. When an alternating voltage is applied in a circuit having one or more resistances, the current through the resistance is alternating. The output voltage is also alternating. If a crystal rectifier is substituted for the resistance, only half of each wave can pass. The output current and voltage are pulsating. The diode tube is a rectifier. In the circuit, it results in waves of pulsating current and voltage. Electrons pass through the plate only during the positive half of the wave. A diode tube may be connected through a transformer to an alternating current line. The plate is connected to one of the secondary windings, the other end of which is led through a resistance to the cathode or filament of the tube. The filament or heater is connected to another secondary winding of the transformer. The tube is a part of two complete circuits, the filament circuit and the plate circuit. The external plate circuit extends from plate around to the filament. With such a circuit in action, electrons rush in the upper or filament circuit in first one direction and then the other. The electrons in the plate circuit move to the plate only when it is positive. A unidirectional pulsating current flows in the plate circuit, and a pulsating voltage drop appears across the resistor. For full wave rectification, a duodiode tube is used. This tube, in addition to having heater and cathode or filament, is equipped with two plates. In every other way, this tube is similar to the diode tube. For full wave rectification, the duodiode tube is attached to a transformer in much the same way as was the diode. The two plates are attached to one of the transformer windings. Either plate of the tube is part of a circuit extending through a portion of one of the transformer windings, out through a center tap, and around to the filament. Let us illustrate the flow of electrons in these circuits. First, one plate of the tube is made positive, and then the other, the electrons always flowing to the positive plate. Both halves of the cycles of applied voltage are utilized by the full wave rectifier in making a unidirectional current. This direct current varies, but is not interrupted. The variations are known as ripple. The voltage wave resulting from the voltage drop across the resistor is also a varying wave, but not interrupted, as in the case of the half-wave rectifier. Filters are usually employed in both the half-wave and full-wave rectifiers to remove the voltage variation. This filter is not shown in this circuit. The principles that have been illustrated by the diode and duodiode tubes are basic and are incorporated in tubes of a wide variety of sizes and kinds. Simple tubes, multipurpose tubes, rugged transmitter tubes of great power, small tubes giving to our military receiving sets their great sensitivity. The vacuum tube is the heart of every radio installation, is back of every wave radiating from or to an antenna.
And it did not contain any of the information I was thinking of or looking for, but that was actually extremely educational, and I believe this was like the first or the third in the series that I'm looking at. Anywho.
All right, once again, property of Periscope Films. All credits due for the purposes of review or criticism.
Good call. I shall also post the link in the live chat for everybody right now so that you can go give Periscope a like and subscribe if you enjoyed that documentary educational film that they restored.
My favorite one from them is, and it's so good, it's the operation of a klystron. And the animations are stellar. When you try to represent radio waves in physical systems that work analog, you know, we've seen plenty of animations about how a magnetron works and whatnot, but their animations are incredible for the time. I would say they do a better job teaching.
Are you talking about the one that they do the particle beam out of like the back of the TV and then like they show you like it shooting like the freaking photon gun or whatever the heck?
Well, type in Navy klystron tutorial or something like that.
Do you mind finding it and posting it in private chat?
Or,
and then I can
Navy klystron training. No, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. Mike can video.
Yeah, we should call her a night, everyone. 2 hours and, well, it was 2 hours and 12, but no, it was 2 hours 13 and 3 seconds now. And good call, Mike. Thank you for your commitment and love, brother. Jeremiah, thank you for being here. And Mike will be here, and I will be here, and we will all be here at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern start next Friday. Extraordinary League of Inventors.
Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us, and all the guys that joined the cast tonight. Thanks a lot, and we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah, sounds good. Doesn't look like we have too many people in the audience today, so maybe no after party today. But... all right, let's finish it up.
All right.
Sorry, I was just finally posted the link to Periscope in the live chat, and everyone enjoy that, and we will see you next week. Ta-ta. Thanks for watching, and come forward if UFO Snowden or just the next world-changing genius, or if you have the idea that will bring it all together, come forward next week. We'll be here, hopefully. So will all of you. And until then, talk.